So this week we are going to be doing elliptical still lifes with value. And so for the first example, I'm going to actually continue the drawing that I did last week of the glassware. And so I'm going to take the cross contour drawing and I'm going to just start laying in shadows. And I'm going to work from the left side of the page over to the right so that my hand doesn't smudge too much. But what I'm doing is basically laying in the cast shadow, and the cast shadow refers to the shadow that the objects leave on the surface, um, and just kind of building up lightly some of that value. But I'm tending to draw my shading in the directions of the cross contour, so it's curved or it's vertical, depending on the shape, and just building in nice and lightly. And then I also come in and I erase where my highlights are. Um, and Notice that there's cast shadows kind of going in two directions because I had two different light sources. Um, and just kind of building that up and showing, kind of really kind of defining the lines, um, and showing the distortions in the glass. And and then there you have it. Just building up shadow lightly, but building up in layers. So then this next example, this is the life of some glasses, salt and pepper shakers, and a jar. And I highly recommend photographing your still lifes from multiple angles, and then choosing which angle looks best, is most dynamic, or is the best composition. It's good to show some overlapping of the objects. So I'm going to do this drawing twice. The first one I'm going to do is kind of a quicker sketch, kind of laying out the composition. And so notice that I'm drawing in some boxes, really light and loose, um, just to kind of lay out the composition. And so this is what I do, especially when I'm working from direct observation. Just kind of lay out some lines, and this allows me to kind of move things around later, um, before I invest too much time. And and again, I'm just quickly going to just kind of lay it out, and then I'll come in and do details at later. But really just kind of laying out the composition all together. So I highly recommend doing that instead of trying to complete one object and then the next object and so forth. Because I can move things around without investing too much time into the detail. And so just kind of quickly, you notice I draw my ellipses very quick and fluid. Um, it's something you want to kind of practice is getting ellipses more natural by kind of a continual line drawing. And then just kind of making sure that my ellipses are kind of as wide as they should be, um, and then coming in and doing kind of a quick cross contour just so that I can see the openings, see the actual form and shape of the objects. And so coming in doing some vertical lines as well, and just kind of laying it out. Not too much detail, just kind of figuring out its general shape. Um, and so this one is kind of a just a practice, really. So I do encourage you to do a quicker drawing that's more practice, and then um, that will make the drawings that you turn in have a little bit more experience, have a little bit better understanding of what you're trying to draw. And so just going in now and starting to build up some value. So in the pepper shaker, I'm going to darken in the areas but leave my highlights left alone, and then looking at kind of the shadows on the underneath sides of each part of the glass of the shaker, and just kind of building that, nice and kind of loose and freer. Not trying to be too detailed yet. Detail should come last, right? Allows you to kind of work with the drawing, allows you to erase, allows you to kind of you know mold the drawing as you go along. So working kind of lighter and then coming in and doing detail, building up value is how I suggest going about doing these value drawings. And so now kind of just defining the contour of the shakers themselves, and then putting in some detail. And so now I am going to be laying in the detail of each individual object. But you notice that that's kind of what I come to do last. So save detail for the end. And now I'm going in and drawing the glass behind, and it's good to show how objects overlap one another, block out parts of the object, and I'm also going to show some distortion from the glass as well. Here I am going to work on the jar, build up some value into it. But again, notice how I do all of my shading in the directions of my cross contour. And that's what I definitely recommend. Laying in a little bit of the background, but showing how that background gets distorted in the glass is going to give that realistic look that you're going to try to achieve. And so here I am working on the ellipse at the top of the glass, laying in just some light kind of cross contour on the table that they're sitting on, which will allow me to kind of determine which direction I should do some of my shading. And shading is just building it up, right? You don't try to necessarily get it dark right away, but build up kind of layers of graphite onto the paper. And you can always come back and erase and pull your highlights out with an eraser. And so here I'm just kind of showing the kind of the detail in the glass, and that's kind of created more with value. And but this one's just going to be kind of a practice drawing for the final one I actually do. And so and again, so I want you to do your A3 drawings first, right? As they're going to be practice for your A2 drawing. And so coming in and just building up some more value. Turn my pencil on the side and allow it to shade, so it's not so much lines but more just kind of like this nice flat shading that you're going to get. And so that's more of turning the pencil at an angle to the paper, and giving it some ability to build up value through a more softer shade rather than harsher lines and so forth. So you come in, and I'm also going to just pull out with my eraser some of the highlights, and that's I think key is to once you get it to a nice even value, middle range value, then you can pull out the areas that are white with the eraser. You can try to leave areas white, but they're usually going to get a little bit messy. So it's good to kind of bring that eraser back to really kind of show off the highlights and where the light is hitting the objects the harshest. And so, and just kind of coming in, and you come back after that and um, shade a little bit more. So there's kind of an example of kind of quick version of it. And now I'm going to do it again, showing more of the background, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one. Um, really try to make sure that I get my angles correct here. Um, and so this one I did looking at the photo rather than looking at the objects just themselves. And as you can see, I've laid in the cross contour. So, you know, it is good to start with cross contour like you did last week. This is going to give you a lot more idea of the form and shape of these objects. Um, Here I'm kind of darkening in the contour lines, and then I'm going to go in um, after this and lay in the shading. And so just building up my values, showing the distortion of the background in the glass. Um, and one thing to do is kind of squint your eyes and look at the photo. And notice how I've turned all the photos into black and white photos. This is going to be the best way to really understand and assess your value range. I am going to add a little detail in the jar, but you know, detail like words and so forth is not absolutely necessary. I'm more looking at your value range and that you're getting your darks as dark as possible, um, and also showing me that your highlights are um, you know, white where the light hits the hardest is the best place to you know, show that that highlight, and you need to. It's very important to have everything from white to black and all of the grays in between. So now I'm just going in and finishing up my last little details, um, and kind of working out some of the value. Just, you notice I kind of keep going back over it each time. And there you have it. So the next one, I'm going to put the objects up against the mirror, and this is a great way to multiply or double the number of objects that you have in the still life. So for your second A3 and your A2 drawing, you're going to need a lot more objects, and so this is a good way to do that. So you notice I took again more photos, um, and I start with um, doing the cross contour drawing of these objects, and, and really kind of get their placement and also their alignment with their reflection in the mirror, using guidelines and also my 2-point perspective. Um, Helps me make sure that everything kind of lines up and is in its place. And then I come in and I add all of my value, um, kind of erasing some of those cross contour lines, drawing over them with shading, pulling out my highlights with the eraser. And then the last one I'm going to show you is a tray of objects here. And so again, looking at more top-down angles, side angles, profile angles, and then also zooming in, looking closer at them, thinking about how my composition can really fill the page. And so this one I'm kind of showing you uh, because I don't want you to get overly invested in the detail, but more about the value of the drawing itself. And so um, there you have one more drawing, just kind of showing you what I'm looking for this week when you're adding value to elliptical still lifes. And so here are some examples of some past students' work. Um, and so, I wanted to make sure that you kind of start with just a few objects, anywhere from 3 to 5 objects to begin with, but make sure that they're all cylindrical or elliptical in some way. Um, and then think about how you can arrange the composition so it's the most interesting. Also, really key to think about is checking your value range, and so those exercises I had you creating value with different media are going to it's going to be helpful to keep that handy so that you can see what is black, what is all your different levels of gray, and so you notice how you still see a little bit of the cross contour in them, but it's about taking it to a more realistic level and showing that value with light and dark, and the cross contour is going to help you think about that object shape and its light.